Welcome to another stream here at Lightingbot. As usual, we are continuing our new stream content of roundtable, panel talk, call it whatever you want, to be honest. And as usual, we're going to have our esteemed guests, Chris and Jeremy, here to join as well. As usual, please ask any questions as we talk, and please be part of the conversation. Maybe you have your own stories, maybe you are struggling with something and you want our advice. So that's all good and ready. All right. And thank you for tuning in and thank you for leaving comments. We love comments, we love engagement. So keep that up. Hello, Jeremy. Yeah, it's almost like Jeremy, only different. All right. So let's welcome Chris in to the stream. Hey, Chris.
Hello. How are you guys?
And also let's welcome Jeremy in.
Hello.
This time I decided to say I'm about to add you in case you're having a coffee or something, like jumping into the camera last minute. Woo. Hey, Luis. There we go. Cool, man. So obviously today's topic is soft skills, and as usual, I'll try and engage you guys as we talk. Hey, Neil. Hey, Zone. Hey, Jeremy. You're chatting on our own. That's very nice of you. Thank you. The streamer being a streamer, engaging with text as well, multitasking. The elite himself. That's good. Gives my job easy, I suppose. All right. So we have soft skills. So what does it mean? Let's first have you guys introduce yourself a bit, because we kind of didn't do it properly last time. I would like to do it a bit more formally this time around. So, Chris, why don't you start first with introducing yourself?
All right, cool. Hello, I'm Chris. Yeah, I'm for the most of my career, I've been an environment artist for like 10 years, 11 years, something, and then during the last parts of my years, I decided to go more into tech and programming. So at this point, I've just evolved into a tech art director. So yeah, that's what I'm currently working as, and it's in the games industry.
Your journey is super interesting, Chris, because it's just like you're super tech curious, like you just always getting in there, but you're also an artist. Dude, we all are. Yeah, so I'm Jeremy, or Jeremiah Estrellado. I'm a lead environment artist. I've been in games since, dude, Chris, it's 16 years this year. It's kind of disturbing.
What was it like working on like Pong or something?
Like pre-normal maps?
Exactly. You're pre-normal maps.
Yeah, I remember trying to convince people to use normal maps. Anyways, I created the Dynasty Empire in a pursuit of self-growth in the art world, and then now it's transformed into helping anyone and everyone possible when it comes to being a better artist and also a good developer for everyone to work with.
Nice. And as usual, I'm just me. I'm just here because I got nothing better to do, so that's why I'm just just here helping, facilitating. So obviously we are talking about soft skills. I think actually the first question I would like to ask you two, and let's start with Jeremy. What is soft skills? What do you think about? What's your definition and understanding of soft skill? Let's just establish that baseline first.
So baseline for soft skills, in my perspective, is just being able to be a good communicator, which just like super high level, it's just communication. And then how good or how well you are at communicating with other people, whether it's your objectives or trying to come to a solution with a bunch of other people. I think that's the better that, or the smoother that goes, the better your soft skills tend to be.
Okay. Chris, what about you?
I would like to say the same answer. No, I mean, communication, yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, communication. Not everybody's great at communication. I feel like there are so many other things, soft skills, that keeps the companies running. When you're working together as a team. I'm not sure I even have a specific description of what soft skills are. It's just like this cloud of how to interact with other people in any kind of way, So yeah.
All right. Yeah. That's fair enough. So Would you agree or disagree, both of you, that would you say even though we focus so much on learning the tactical skills and artistic skills and getting the work done, we kind of forget that maybe, at least I would maybe argue and say 40% of like soft skills and communication is maybe equally important almost, and it's kind of forgotten, it's not really trained upon, it's not really focused upon. And when people join, I don't know if you've experienced it, but I've seen it happen a few times where people are talented, they're skilled, but they lose the job, not because they're not skilled at the job, but they just don't have sufficient soft skills or communication skills. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's start with Jeremy.
Oh, okay.
You'd have time
I
to
mean,
it's
no,
like
no,
too
that's
fast.
I'm listening to you. So I mean, I totally agree with it being at least 40, and I think as you go further up in the hierarchy of like how games are produced, right? So that you go from like intern or junior all the way up to like a lead or a director, your soft skills have to follow with that. And I think those, you end up having to use your soft skills even more as you go up that path. Um, I mean, if you look at interviews, like when you interview someone, the on-site interview or the calls, those are the soft skill tests. Like that's kind of the test. Let's see how this person interacts with us. Let's see what they're about, how they deal with questions. Are they nervous? Like, let's get a sense of how they deal with their stress or their nervousness. And
Right.
you know,
Okay. Chris, what about you?
I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've been in interview situations, for example, where like the person might be very, very skilled, right? But they're like maybe even overly arrogant to the point where it's like obnoxious, kind of annoying. And you just feel like, okay, it's not gonna work with the team, right? And then it's a huge issue. Like most of us, I would say, yeah, like most of the people I know and other leads, right? They would prefer someone that makes the vibe nice, like can gel with the team, can take direction and feedback, and with a smile, see everything more as an opportunity to learn rather than a challenge, and so yeah, I mean, I definitely think it is kind of hard to, like, especially in the interview moment, right, to judge people, because different people are, they react differently to interviews, and some might be very nervous, like their true self doesn't come through, right? Which is also why it's sometimes important to have several interviews, because if you've talked to the same people over and over, at least you will calm down, right? So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So soft skills, you guys. Jeremy, you kind of indirectly mentioned it just for the fun of it. So you said like at least 40%. So if we start ranking, okay, you're a junior or intern. So if you start at 40% on intern, so what is junior 50? And then what is it, like mid 70? Like how would you try and rank
I
this
mean,
this importance?
I would say 40 is like
The
because
base.
it's making a game as a group effort, right? And the
Yeah.
more that you have the ability to interact and communicate and properly express your ideas and problem solve, the better it's going to be for the project and for the team kind of gelling together. Like when you have a team that everyone is just like, they've kind of figured out who they are, that everyone's gelling and they're just kind of making it happen. The vibe, like Chris was saying, the vibe is good. The game just seems to happen faster. Things just get answered. You know who to go to, you know how to ask them, when's a good time to ask. It's like being able to read the room if you're getting too excited, like be able to keep it down. Chris gets super excited, and for me, I enjoy that. So I I like
Not
having that
everybody
type of
does
energy
that.
around.
Right, right. I mean, let's take a few questions so we don't go too far in the conversation.
Mm.
So, what about soft skills that don't fall under communication, such as planning and problem solving? Is that organization skills? Is that management skills? How are we categorizing this?
I mean, it's part of soft skills still, right? I mean, it
With
is
the planning and problem
valuable.
solving.
Yeah. I mean,
Mm.
as a new person, or like if you're new or a junior or whatever, the planning part, you teach people how to plan, you teach people how to think and what, you know, like how to deal with risk and stuff. Like I don't really expect people to be great at that starting out. You know, some people are just more organized than others, and then you kind of have to teach them how to be organized as well, at least to the point where, you know, that's helping them, like, you know, not everybody likes it, obviously. Problem solving, yeah, I'm not really sure.
I mean,
Game development in general is just problem solving, the whole everything. It's
Yeah.
like 5 years if you're in a bad project of problem solving, right? Like fixing every issue, you know, everything is a problem, you know. So
That's true. What about
I
you?
mean, that is super accurate. So problem solving, because we're talking about a project being built, right? You've got a big team, or like even if it's indie, it's a small team. I would say your soft skills have to be even better if you're, I would assume, if you're in a smaller team, because now the people you're interacting with are like, that's the person that also does the animation and also does the level design, or like,
Mm.
you know, and being able to communicate well is important. The problem solving part, like when I read that, I'm like, man, some problems, like I can identify that it's a problem and I can see all the repercussions of what's going to happen if we don't fix that problem, but I don't have the skill set to solve it. So having a conversation with a group of, I don't know, if you're at a big studio, maybe it's like 10 people if it's a really serious topic to try and sort out for the game. That's going to get into a territory where like you have to be able to sort through all of the thoughts and the processes that everyone else is going through, and then also making sure that you're listening to what they're saying and not just waiting for like the moment to say the thing you want to say. Like you have to be able to really focus on what's happening in those meetings, because problem solving is going to happen in a meeting usually. If it happens at a desk, hopefully it's getting noted down and documented somewhere, because that can, then you start to go into a bubble of information.
I mean,
Which
problems
can be
grow out of
dangerous.
control as well.
Oh yeah,
Like so easily. Like if you're in a if you're in a AAA development, or even just, you know, mid-sized development, right? Like there are a lot of problems that's just way out of your control. Like they just keep, you try and contain it, but it's like a balloon that just kind of just, you know, fills the space in between. It keeps growing, you know. It's just really hard to manage. And at some point, like you'll be like, you're a grunt and you talk to your lead and you're like, this is a problem, and he just goes, yeah, you know, and then the lead goes to the manager or whatever, and yeah, you know, can't do anything, and that just goes stop the chain, and it's just, yeah, it's very hard to solve those, because it would mean structural changes to like the whole company. Like you could lose, yeah, weeks trying to fix issues, and they will just be like, yeah, we don't really have time to do that. So that happens.
it's interesting the way you're saying that as well, Chris, because that means that you're assuming that a problem gets highlighted and then it's brought to a lead or a senior, so it's
Yeah, I
already
mean,
starting to
yeah.
go up right into the chain of like how the communication happens. And that's kind of, that is exactly why I feel like, especially at lead level, like I've been a lead for almost 3 years now,
Yeah.
and it's so clear that it's all about communication and getting information spread around in a right way that makes sure that everyone is kind of like beating the same drum and we're like moving as a unit.
Yeah, being transparent isn't always good. I prefer being transparent about things, but it's also not always good, because like it depends. As a lead, right, you have a team of people and they all have different personalities, and you kind of have to manage that. You kind of have to understand like how different people react to certain things, right? So like some people might be fine with the transparency and like they want to know what's happening on a higher level, you know, project level, like how are things going. But if you tell that to some people, like they could freak out, like they could use, it's like stressing them out, they lose focus on work, you know, it's like damaging to their mental health to be able, because like your lead problem is now somehow their problem.
Yeah, their
as well,
subconscious
you know?
problem. Yeah.
And it messes with some people, right? So like being a lead, part of that is just also like managing that type of stuff. You have to know the people you're working with.
Man, that's a whole tangent I could get into.
Oh,
talking about just how you manage transparency, because I also agree transparency is really important, and being able to give that information out, that's the soft skill, right? Being able to figure out how to be transparent in a way where everyone feels like everyone knows what's happening. But I've also kind of thought about like, okay, if you've got transparency to the max, your transparency only goes as far as someone's memory, right? So transparency almost needs to be documented. And then you can do a high level transparency. And if they want to dig deeper, they can go there. But
That's
yeah.
interesting. I mean, I'm definitely one of the people who needs transparency. Otherwise, I just get annoyed. I'm like, I want to know every detail. I want to know as much as I possibly am allowed to know, basically.
But you don't freak out, like if
no, I don't freak out. Like they can be like a panic situation. Could even be a financial situation. You know, I've been in a couple of studios where they're telling us, "Oh, well, this is happening," and most people would be like, "Jump the ship" or whatever. I'm like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it depends on personality, of course, as you say, understanding. But I think it also again depends on person's previous experiences, what they've managed to go through and survive.
Yeah.
If they've been laid off before, I think also kind of matches in their perception about transparency. And I also think it matters on like how they handle more responsibility, less responsibility, because by giving that information you are indirectly giving that person trust, but also responsibility that they don't want, as you kind of said earlier. So I think there's some truth in it, but I think a lot of people claim they want transparency, which can. So are we saying transparency is honesty, or is two different things? Because for some people that's the same thing. So if you're not transparent, you're therefore dishonest, right?
Yeah.
So you have to understand there's a language difference there too. So let's say being transparent is honest, and a lot of people want you to be honest, but as you probably stated, a lot of people don't actually know how to handle it because they don't necessarily understand all the puzzle pieces, because you don't have time to explain all the puzzle pieces, and unless they have some previous experience in doing XYZ thing, they might not be able to understand what actually that means and what's the consequences of what's going on. Therefore you spend more time explaining all of it, and then you're like, yeah, and this, and then you answer the question and you explain, yeah, we're actually going to do this and this and this, and then you kind of indirectly waste a lot of time as well on one person. So I think it was at Ubisoft they would do the transparent stuff that they're comfortable sharing in front of everyone. They would like go through everything. This is what's going, this is what we lost, this is what's happening, this is how we're dealing with it, this is how we're splitting up the studio, this is how many people we have to move somewhere else, this is a consequence. And when you say that, of course a lot of people might feel like, okay, I'm gonna jump ship because I don't want to take the risk. And not every studio accommodates for these things. I think it's interesting for sure. I'll let you think about it before I ask the next question.
There's one thing I want to touch on that I just started to realize maybe like within the last year, and it's like there's a soft skill attribute to like multicultural studios. So it's being able to understand if you send an invite to a meeting that's like all hands meeting, it looks very important, right? Because everyone's going, okay, what's happening? If there's no description in there, North American developers that are at the studio will immediately think, oh my God, there's layoffs. Layoffs are coming. Like, so there's like this communication level that needs to be understood based on like who is involved at your studio from a cultural standpoint. So it becomes really intriguing. I just watch it because I'm like, I never noticed that before, and now I just really pay attention to like all these like smaller social details.
I mean, you have to, especially when you're formally a lead, you definitely have to, right? Because you might be interviewing people, you might be more responsible for people coming and going, you might have a discussion about raise, or they might be talking to you, how do I get the raise, and you kind of, how do you deal with this, and which I think is funny because you know how much you get paid, and they might be asking for an amount that's equal to yours, and that gets awkward sometimes. So there's a lot of things that happens. But you mentioned so I'm going to backtrack a little bit because there was a question about it, just to tie in some of the. So Jeremiah says you can't really tell until you interview them though about soft skills, and I wanted to follow up on that conversation and asking. So you two obviously also are probably involved in some interviews, I would assume, at least during a year or something. And if that is the case, do you do interviews? Do you pay more attention to them as the soft skills, communication skills, as personality and cultural fit, or do you want to pay more attention to can they do the job? Because normally I've been told this anyway, that the HR department normally checks first: is it a cultural fit? Is this a likable person? Is that person going to fit in? Or do you still do like a double checkup? Do you think he's going to fit into the team? Is she going to get along with X amount of people or Y amount of people? Let's hear your point of view and experience so far on that.
All right.
You want to
wanna
start, Chris?
I can start.
Yeah.
It's definitely different. I do more interviews now, being in I'm double A, I guess, right? I do more interviews now. It's a different type of different types of things that I tend to look for, right? Like I've already said that, like the vibe check is important, right? Usually you have multiple interviews with a person, so that you can tell different things. It's not always like a bad thing. Like they're continuously checking. Sometimes it's in favor of the person, right? They want to have multiple interviews because of, maybe they're super nervous. It's just also to give them a chance to actually adjust. Personally, I tend vibe checking for me, like working double A or like a smaller studio where it matters a lot to me, for example, that the person is willing to go onto deep water without like being scared. In a sense of like, if I say, I need you to go and research these systems and come up with like a plan for how we're going to deal with these things, I want a person that's willing to do that, right? So I tend to have a lot of questions about like, what do you do in your spare time? To kind of check, like, is this person actively trying to learn in their spare time? Are they interested in learn? Like, if depending on the person, right, and what if it's I'm like interviewing a programmer for some reason, right, I would ask like about like new tech coming in, for example, just to check like, are they keeping up to date with the new stuff? For example, that, I mean, because it matters to me, right? Because you kind of, it also shows like they're trying to push their knowledge and their skills forward. So yeah, for me that matters. I'm not sure about how it works. I haven't really done that many interviews when I was working AAA. Maybe you have, Jeremy.
I started doing interviews when I became a senior, I guess, because it's like you would want a lead to have someone that's part of the team maybe included in like maybe one of the initial interviews, right? So I did a decent amount as a senior. As a lead, for sure, it's much more, right? Because you're interviewing for your team, building your team, or the other art lead teams. And for me, it's like you're saying, it's like a vibe check, or like if I look at their portfolio, normally if we're in this interview, they've already proven that they're enough, artistically skilled enough to be able to fulfill the job, whether it be a technical role or like an art role. I really like storytelling when I look at portfolios, so like I'm already super in once I see that. So when we have like an actual interview that's either in person or in calls, for me, I'm looking for like, what are they like, how do they feel about specific topics, or like just starting to like, I'm very casual in an interview, and that can throw people off because they're like, what's going on here? And I'm just like, I'm just here. Like we're just having a conversation,
throwing down your defenses.
Like we're here, we're just talking about the spot that you applied for, and I liked these things in your portfolio. Like, what did you think you could do better on it? Those are classic questions, but it's kind of prodding more at like, okay, like you're saying, are they looking into new techniques? Or if the most recent piece on their portfolio is quite a bit older, is there like, what's the reasoning for that? So it turns into a conversation, which kind of pulls into these soft skills of how do they present the information of, oh, I haven't made any art in the last year, but I'm applying for this position. And that can be okay, because if their portfolio looks really good, it's fine. But I'm curious, how do you deal with that? How do they process these questions? And if people aren't laughing, or it's way too serious, I start to like wonder, like, are are they stressing like really hard? I try and break that a little bit so it can just like loosen it up and just let's just chat. Let's have a chat.
I usually just tell people that it's okay to be nervous, and that tends to like calm people down a little bit. Like acknowledging the fact that yes, it's an interview situation and it's okay to be nervous.
Yeah.
How does it feel when actually there's one thing I did on some of the interviews I've done. What we do is we'll take a piece of the people like attending and interviewing, and we'll do a paint over and critique it. We say, have you tried this? Have you considered this? And we check how they respond to the feedback. Are they getting defensive? Are they getting hostile? Are they understanding what we're trying to say? And we're kind of doing a very, because because if you're senior, and especially if you're an art director or you collaborate with the art director, you want someone not necessarily that's fully obviously you want someone who's coachable as well, but you also want to make sure that it's not someone who's difficult or arrogant or all-knowing, right? Because everyone has something to learn, I would imagine, or hopefully people feel this way without feeling insecure. So that was a very good technique that I learned over the couple of years, is just critique something, see how they deal with it. And I do the same thing, to be honest, when I'm doing the mentorship as well. And the free stuff is I'm paying attention. Do you deal with the critique? Do you deal with it in a mature way, or how do you respond to it? How do you answer the question of why did you do it? Is, for example, a very good way of figuring out their mindset of not feeling too much conflict, but just how to respond to a bit of tension without being uncomfortable or rude, basically. But I think it's a good approach to things. But that brings us to the other thing you guys talked about earlier, because Jeremy, you kept saying documentation, and that
Did I say it that often?
in all of the sentences, there was documentation was very important to you.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that. How important is documentation a part of soft skill communication? And especially as a lead or senior, you often do have to do documentation and track your progress. So especially if you leave the company, you're often asked to do a documentation as well, because you might be the only person who has the knowledge and you need to do knowledge transfer. How important is that process of being able to document something? Because that's often forgotten skill, a part of the communication part of a lot of studios and at least the ones I've been with, especially as an outsourcer and freelancer. So what are you guys thought about that?
I mean, Jeremy loves documentation. I know this as well. I love documentation as well. For like my the people that work under me, or like my artists or whomever, when I ask them to document something, right, I don't expect them to be the best documenters. I don't know. Like I don't expect them to like write perfect documentation. I just need them to like gather images, gather the notes, and then I can rewrite it into something that's more usable for like the project, right? It's just like you personally, like for me, I don't have time to do that all myself sometimes, so I ask them to do it, and then I look through it, I review it, and then I rewrite whatever needs to. And usually it's a learning experience as well. Like, okay, we're doing it like this because we need to, someone who hasn't been on the project needs to be able to read it and understand what the heck is going on, right? So like, it's a learning experience, like teach people like this is what you need, how you need to write stuff. So no, there's like, for me, there's like really no pressure for people, having to learn how to document in that sense.
Okay. How about you, Jeremy?
I was gonna say that so documentation is like a hard skill, right? So we're talking soft skills, but hard skill of documentation is literally converting all of the stuff that we solved through soft skills into like a hard format that you can go back to. That's like kind of like a manual in a sense. But you can kind of flip that around now when you think about like onboarding someone. When someone joins a studio, all that documentation is there. That allows them to be able to integrate with the team faster and easier and know more about what's going on in like kind of a, I want to say drip fed way, but I don't mean it in that sense. It's like you're getting all this, you're slowly this progression of understanding what you're involved in now, and being able to onboard quickly requires that documentation.
Interesting.
And so then that increases your soft skills just by the fact of like strong documentation.
Okay. Are we agreeing that hard skill and soft skills is part of communication then?
I don't know actually.
Because there's a next question which might be interesting to discuss that, because in this day and age of remote work, a lot of us are spending time typing, writing, generally speaking. So how does that entail? Because we're talking about soft skills on camera in person, but a lot of us spend just time writing, judging someone based on the writing skills. So what do we do there? Is it soft skill? Is it hard skill? It's still communication? I would say, in my eyes, it's still communication, but it's a different form of communication and a different skill of communication. Let's talk a little bit about that. How do you deal with that kind of Slack messages or whatever?
You definitely Chris, I was gonna say, like, you run into developers that are like they prefer face to face. And it's maybe because they either run into issues with how either they're typing or how someone else is typing, and they just prefer the face to face conversations. And those, I mean, you can have those. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's actually a problem now a little bit, because in the same way that some people don't like to be hugged, some people don't like face to face when they get the option to, be writing instead, right? So they'd rather not have any person on the team is calling them, and it can lead to like the fact that they're just ignoring the call, right? And then it reflects back. It's definitely tricky these days because I mean, in the studio you don't really have an option, kind of. You just you talk to people. That's when they approach you.
It is interesting because more and more people are using typing. Luckily, Slack has added voice recording, which I think helps, video voice recording, which I think helps, because I do prefer to show my body language, tone of voice as much as possible, because a lot of people perceive me as rude or angry when I'm typing, because it's very direct to the point. So I either have to spend energy formulating in a very specific way, which I find very exhausting. I can just send a video message and I can hear, okay, he's in a good mood. There's no problem, it's all safe. So I do think it's a communication skill, but are we losing some of our soft skills in this day and age? With all the typing, working remotely, maybe not going out as much, as per my observation anyway. I do reckon that is happening slowly. What are your observations?
Sure, yeah.
That's
losing it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think. I mean, I only really have like the younger generation to go for. Like most of the older devs, they still just call you, right? We're talking face to face. But like a lot of the younger generation, they're so comfortable with the written, like they're communicating in memes and gifs, it's super fun, But I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not.
Have
sure
you
if I
ever
can
been
say
in
that.
the studio then? Have you ever been in the studio? If you ever done that, and you have a teammate, colleague who's sitting, maybe a table behind you in front, you're still using Slack rather than going to the person and talking.
I mean, how far behind? You mean like he's right behind?
Like you have to go one
away,
table away, basically. So like 20 steps or something, nothing major.
Yeah, a lot of people prefer that. I don't know.
I mean, you have your work from home days too, right? I don't know. Like Chris, you're always work from home.
I've been working home for 3 years, so
yeah. But like, if you have like a hybrid company where there's like 2 days out of the week you can work from home. Usually, if they start talking about topics that are very they're going to be long form, like, oh, we need to like fully discuss this. I will set it up as a meeting that will happen on site when people are present. Or like wait until, let them know, oh, let's take this tomorrow when you're in the office, because then we don't have to sit here typing for very long, or we can do a call if you want, like, because I feel like it's going to be long-winded. Yeah,
I like having stuff in writing sometimes, because you're like actively, if you're like giving feedback to someone, then they have it in writing already. They can go back to it and they can call you out on your bullshit. You know, if you're like, do this, and then next week you're like, do that.
That's one of the reason it's sometimes uncomfortable for people to use Slack, because some people would take screenshot and send it to someone else that wasn't part of the conversation. That happens as well. So
Man, I totally forget people can take pictures of your chat.
yeah,
Oh,
that happens
no.
all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting too, because when you have that, you can either have a healthy culture in some companies, or you can also have like behind the scene toxic kind of talking as well, because of all the conversation that happens. So that's where a lot of people that I've spoken to so far feel more comfortable doing in person, because they know it's more private unless you're recording the conversation. But I do see the point with Chris as well, that you can always go back, especially if you're talking to a lead. I would probably, even if I had a in-person conversation, I would probably ask the lead, as at least as a junior, I would have asked the lead to, can you send me a written confirmation, bullet points, so we have it.
There's like a huge amount of like gaslighting type stuff going on in studio sometimes, where people just be like, no, I didn't say that. And the person, would be
Oh
like,
my God.
I'm sure they said that. Like, that was the feedback from the last week. What, like I just prefer it being written form sometimes,
Yeah.
It helps a lot with that, because
Both is good.
I noted all down.
both
man.
is good. Both is good. I wouldn't say like do the one over the other, to be honest.
Like I went format, process, workflows. Like all of that is like how my brain operates these days. So it's like, okay, we're gonna go into this meeting. This is the topic we're discussing. And then near the end of the meeting, or when I feel like it's kind of, if it's going over time and I've got time, I just keep going. But at the end, it's extremely important to go, okay, so these are the things we covered. Do you feel like there's anything that was missing?
Yeah.
And then you also make sure to message like that list. Like, I'm going to follow up on this one and this one you're going to follow up on, and we'll come back together. But like, it can easily, because it's verbal, if it's not written down or documented anywhere, can just
people forget,
disappear.
Man.
You can forget easily. Like there can be no ill intentions and it's just gone.
That's where the organization comes in as well, right? Like if I'm giving people feedback and I'm not writing it down, usually I write stuff down as well. But like if they're not taking notes, it's going to be a huge issue. Like I've worked with juniors, like early in my career, right? Like where like they would not take notes and they would forget everything everything I told them. And it would be continuously like them asking me about like how to do certain things, where I've already shown them like a million times how to do a thing, right? I'm just like, write it down step by step as we go through it, So I think taking notes is like a really important thing to do.
It's very important.
Yeah.
I remember I did one gig many years ago and I didn't take notes. And one of the critique I got was, you didn't take notes when I was teaching you the stuff. I said, well, I was hoping I could remember all of it. No, you didn't, though. So in terms of the writing down, so this is a communication skill. So how do you interpret a written application? Okay, if you think of it as a communication soft skills, hard skill, when you read an application, which I don't even know if you do, maybe you never read the CV or the cover letter and you just jump into the interview, and maybe you didn't do it. I've seen a lot of people don't even read the paperwork and they ask the question they should have prepared for when you're the interview and as interviewee. How do you pay attention to grammar? How the sentence structure, does that make any impact?
I'm terrible at grammar.
So for you it doesn't matter.
So for me, I'm like, I'm already not great at this, so I'm just gonna look at like what you're saying.
Yeah,
but, no, go ahead, Chris.
No, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But yeah, like in game dev, I just feel like it doesn't matter. There are grammar correction tools. I don't really care if you can spell, as long as you can make sense. And like I don't think I've ever looked at a resume or a cover letter, because it just doesn't matter.
Oh,
right?
interesting.
Like I look at the portfolio. Like obviously sometimes like if a senior is like, I look at like, okay, cool, what studios you've been working on, right? But it's never like, I'm not like like really honing in onto the resume and like inspect it. Like I don't really, it doesn't really matter to me. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I,
interesting you say that though.
yeah,
Come on,
this is
Jeremy.
interesting. Oh no, I just got like, so when I look at a CV, usually I go straight to like what they've done, like where they've
Why
been.
does
What
that
are they?
matter though? It's a team, like,
Because I want to see the points that they wrote down.
yeah,
I'm
okay.
curious about what they said there,
There
because
are
like
so
when,
many like
yeah. Oh, this is good.
high school dropouts or whatever that are amazing developers,
Yes, I agree with
you
that.
know. And it's just like to me it just doesn't matter. Like I don't really, you know.
So are you
I,
saying
I
are you telling people on the stream, about 45 people, that they shouldn't write a
I mean, they
proper
should,
CV?
because you need to, because it's like your resume or your cover letter doesn't go directly to me. It goes through HR usually, right?
Right.
So it's getting vetted, right? So you
But you
should
don't care
pay
as
attention.
a
But
lead.
personally, I don't really care personally. When I hire someone, it's because of their passion, like in game development in general, right? Um, their thirst for knowledge, like that matters to me. You know, I want people to learn and be excited about learning opportunities.
Do they have to be funny?
It helps.
It helps.
No, they don't have to be funny, but like it's you know, vibe check is always good. You know,
I do the vibe check answers so many things. That's
you
why
have fun
I
during the
think
interview.
the
You know, it's
on-site or the like the call, these interviews is so important. Um, the reason I end up liking to at least glance over their CV is because I want to. I didn't even call them CVs until I came to Sweden, man.
yeah,
They were all resumes to me.
resume,
I'm like,
yeah.
what's a CV? I was applying, and they're like, yeah, send your
Like
CV. I'm like,
Latin or
what
something.
the
Yeah.
hell is that? Is that a different type of cover letter? What is?
Yeah.
Um, no, like I want to see. Okay, let's say it's a senior, and they were at these studios. Okay, like they have maybe 3 or 4 bullet points under that job that they were in for 3 or whatever years. Those bullet points could say things like, oh, I lots of problem solving with blah, or like leadership roles, or I took over a lot of managing this thing. It's like, oh, okay, now I know that not only is their portfolio like amazing and we don't need to art test them, but also in their CV, it kind of highlights that they've managed people, even though they're not a lead or whatnot, or they've been able to work on problem solving. Like it's written ways of saying I have soft skills, which maybe they don't even know they've written. They're just kind of expressing things they've done, because that's really what a CV is, right? I've done all these things.
I just usually sit people down and be like, tell me about your last job, right? What did you do? You know, what your responsibilities, right? So I used to do it as a conversational piece, right? And then if they like say something, right, and dealt with all these technical stuff, managing this and that, and then I go like, like hone into that.
Yeah, you're like, whoa,
and be like, oh, okay, so you say you were doing this with all this tech there. So what were you thinking there? And then like I just check, like then I check if like, are they speaking the truth? You know, like can I see the situation as an actual viable thing? You know, whatever.
That is super interesting, Chris, because what this sounds like is you like to go in and just start experiencing the person for who they are, and then when you see something, you pull into it.
Yeah,
for me,
I
don't know questions.
I
I'm
usually
terrible
don't
at
go
questions.
like, here's the resume, and then I read it. It says here that you did this. I rarely do that. I ask them loosely, right? And then like what's, you know, like immediately what comes to their minds will be like the most honest thing you know,
Definitely.
like in that pressured situation.
I'm terrible at questions. I'm terrible at questions. So what I have to do is, by going through the CV, I can have points that I want to start poking at.
Right.
We expand on those in natural conversation.
It's that documenting part of you.
And then I start to pull from that to.
Wow, your approach is so different. So
yeah, that's why I'm so intrigued by this. Yeah.
So do you two ever get cover letters? Do you read cover letters, or do you ignore that as well?
So actually,
I don't.
Whenever I see someone go, hey, I don't know what to write for a cover letter in like the Discord or whatnot, I'm like, why are they asking for a cover letter?
There are so many templated.
Like, I don't understand.
Letters, you know, like it's just like it doesn't really.
Because I know the cover letter is useful for the first initial interview, to get
it's
the
for
interview.
HR.
Yeah, but
it's for HR to read.
Yeah. So do you guys? So Jeremy, since you actually look at the CV, do you ever look at the CV? Because in our case, as 10-year pass, 15-year pass, you have friends in the other companies. And if you
Yes.
see the company, I know this. I have a friend who works there. He probably works. Do you ever message them and ask for how
Definitely.
you do? Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
For
Oh
sure.
yeah.
100%. We'll know who
So
you are. Really.
behave, everyone. Behave.
Yeah, it's a good way. It's a good way to catch a red flag that's very difficult to identify.
Yeah. So that's the advantage of staying in one studio for as long as possible, because then they don't have a
Less,
lot of they have less people to
I don't
ask.
think that
Less
saves
dirt.
you because people
No.
will cycle through there
Yeah.
and they get, they get cross contaminated and then they go back out and then
That's
they
true.
know about you and they know about everyone that was there. And yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have met people that like when the situation gets tense in the production or whatever, they leave. So like,
That's
oh,
true.
things feels like it's not going well because they have a history of like they've been laid off before,
Yeah, I've seen it a
and
few
stuff,
times as
and
well.
then it's just like, oh, this doesn't feel good, and then they just start looking for other jobs, and it doesn't really reflect well necessarily always, because then they're
Yeah.
like. But I mean, yeah, it's
drop out.
tricky. Yeah, it's tricky.
And then you read the CV. If you read the CV, it
It's
says
like
drop out from
1
school
year,
as
1
well.
year, 1 year. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I don't know, man.
I mean, that's one thing I look at, Chris. In a CV, you can tell how long they stayed at studios, right?
Yeah, it matters to me actually.
That matters.
Yeah.
Like if
You
you're
heard it
seeing
there.
yeah, that matters. If you see someone has been like going studio to studio and they're only like one project, that like if you're hiring for a position where you're wanting to like help this person grow and be better and also be part of a project for longer than one cycle, like that to me would be like a soft red flag.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
agree with
this-
that actually. That's why I'm still in my company, because I'm thinking about the future as well. You don't want to jump from one project to another project. I did that with Ubisoft too, and then I got a comment when I was after Ubisoft, because I only did it for one project, then I skipped, and they said it during the interview, all the interviews. Well, why did you just do short term? And it is a red flag for a lot. Even if you have like a good reason or personal reasons, that's the first thing they react on is you worked a year or even less than a year. They're like, okay, what does this mean? So definitely stay long enough. Yeah. Chris, you were gonna say?
I had something to say, but I can't remember now.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Yours was too interesting, and then I just forgot what I was having in mind. I just know.
Okay, let's take a few more questions, move on a little. Maybe it'll come back to you, I'm sure. So since we talked about interview, is there any quick tips for John here about junior environment artists? How do you prepare for the interview? I kind of think we kind of already indirectly answered a little bit about it. How do you prepare interview? How do you what do you do? What don't you put on your CV? If you if you work 1 year, don't put it on your CV. Just leave it. Maybe you have a better chance. I don't know. Any tips?
Do you want to start,
I don't know.
Chris?
Yeah. Usually, if you're a junior environment artist, you're like, most of the time you'd be competing with other juniors hiring for the same position, right? We're all giving you interviews because you have a decent portfolio, so you've already like past that. Then you have the fact that all of you are competing, right? So some of you have better art than the other. So what matters then? Again, we're coming back to the same point. What matters is the vibe check.
Yeah,
Like
social.
we need to, we need to make sure that you're excited, to learn. You can take instruction. Like we want it to be a fun environment. Like I really love having juniors on a project. Like I vastly prefer it. Not because I like to lecture. I like to lecture, but they bring an energy that like gets lost sometimes, from senior veterans, right? Like they bring like that excitement to the project, like they're happy, they're like wanting to tackle. They like the first thing they want to do
Speak
is
for
get into the
yourself, man.
studio.
I'm happy.
Like I'm happy too, but like it's
I'm doing great, man.
They really want to get in there and they just like, I want to make props and I want it to be an important one that shows up in the game. So like, put my, that excitement. I like that excitement.
Yeah.
Like the passion,
That makes sense.
Does that help? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have the fire that you're talking like.
Yeah, the fire. It's important.
Yeah.
Passion, I think, is a good answer. Actually, it's a very good, clean answer. If you have passion, a lot of people, even if they think you're inexperienced, even if they think you have somewhere to go, if you have passion and they think you're coachable,
Yeah,
you are
exactly.
Yes.
Coachable, indeed.
you'll
Yeah.
increase the likelihood.
Hired.
Yeah, I think
You'll
also that.
actually hire someone that's that has maybe their portfolio is not stacking up to the other people that have passed as well. And then that's this vibe check that you're talking about, and like being easy to talk with. Like it's just the conversations are flowing. Like, oh man, we can show this person anything that they may be lacking on right now. Whereas with
There's
the other
some,
person,
yeah.
you have an interview and it's not flowing as well, but their
Mm.
portfolio is better, or they do something in the interview where you're like, oh, I don't know, yeah, maybe not.
Have you ever been in that situation where it's like,
Yes.
yeah?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I've never really had any moments like that where people
I
have
even
said
tried to
something
give
like
them a way
outrageous.
out, and I was like, okay, how are they gonna? And they doubled down, and I'm like, like what is the?
Oh no.
That is
Because it's
awkward
like
though.
it's kind of a way for
Yeah.
me to check to make sure maybe I'm misreading, right?
But that's not just the wipe check. That is the ability. That's the reverse soft skills for me. Is self-reflection, ability to understand yourself and how you're behaving, and kind of like, okay, are you wrong? Do you need to do something? Do you have to change your opinion, or do you have to change the way you behave? Some
How
people
do
can
you?
pick up
Yeah.
on it. Some people pick up on it during an interview, but some people don't. And unfortunately, I don't know how you two are, but I know people who are hiring, and if they have a really like this strong experience, they will warn other people as well, and that is a bit sad when that happens, because you have a personal experience, and just because you didn't have a vibe check, it doesn't mean he wouldn't or she wouldn't vibe with Chris just because it didn't work with you. They might be uncomfortable to thinking you're the weird one as well. They're like, no, this guy is weird. I don't want to work here. That happens
I
too.
think that's why the interview is important for you to like at some point bring the entire team on.
Yeah,
Which
I
sounds
can.
crazy, but if it's like especially if it's in person, like you can just wrap it around like, oh, we're gonna go get coffee, and you can meet the whole team, and it's very casual.
Yeah,
And just
I
see how
mean,
they flow.
I did one interview at the studio, and I did multiple interviews, and I asked for multiple interviews even though I didn't need it. They already gave me the offer, and I wasn't sure because I didn't feel I could pass the vibe check with the art director, and so I did a lot of things like meeting in person and everything, and I turned on the offer because I didn't feel like they passed my vibe check. So I said no, I don't.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want to do it. And I think maybe that's a privilege for us seniors and who have experience. But I think if you have the confidence to do it, I think that's always. I think that's always a good thing to go and do basically.
I wouldn't
Um,
recommend though, like if you're a junior, to like vibe
Yeah.
check the art director, because it's because like you want that first job, right? You can take, like, if you feel like you don't like the art director, the values doesn't match yours or whatever.
Well, here's
like
the thing, though. This is where I kind of disagree, depending on if we continue this discussion. Because if you say yes and they are difficult, you're unhappy, you're miserable, you screw it up, then that's on
Yeah, that's
you,
true.
and you have a very bad project behind you. And this happens a lot if you're freelancer. You chase the money, you do the project, you screw it up, there's something going on, you get miserable just because of money, and then it's gonna hurt you in the long run. So when possible, I do think don't be desperate all the time. Like if you have other options, if you can wait a couple of months, always check all the areas, be very sure, because I at least at my stage at now, I'm very picky that are you going to be a pain in the ass or are you going to make sure I have a good time, a comfortable time? Are you going to understand my feelings and my priorities? So you're just looking at me as a number? If that's the impression I get,
Yeah.
I'm not interested. I'm saying
Yeah.
you can give me $100,000, $200,000. I don't care, because
Yeah, that's a fair
the
point.
money's not worth it. It's your mental health. You have to have a certain mental health, and if you have done work as you two also have done, you must have experience. You're like, oh, this bad leadership, or you just overworked all the time, and you wish you would join another studio for less money, even if they just treated you different, that have a different management style, even, right? So that's
What's
what.
interesting, because I was there when we hired Jeremy to
Yeah, you were part of my
to
interview process.
to Ubisoft. Yeah, to so like, and then it was funny because then we weren't like a huge art team, right? So we would gather you remember that glass conference room on the 5th floor?
The fish tank.
Yeah. We were all in there, right? And we were like 5, 6 artists, right? And we were looking at your portfolio, all of us, and just pointing. People saying their
Yeah.
piece about your stuff, right? And your artist and stuff, yeah. So I mean,
Oh
those
man.
situations happen when you bring in the whole team and they all like look and
Makes sense.
There
scary,
was
but yeah, it happens.
there was something I wanted to say about the last question. Let me find the question again. I was listening to you guys. It was about junior, like a junior applying for a job, right? So
Oh yeah, yeah.
I would say do your research in the company you're applying for. Of course, I think that's a no brainer, but some people don't. I've seen it.
Yeah.
And then also I would say go in with questions that you care about, like how do they deal with overtime? Ask them that.
Yeah,
They're
100%.
not
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
say, hey, this person asked about overtime. We're not gonna hire this person. Questions are just questions.
Is
I've
it
yet to see questions kind of like elevate themselves to that point where it's
is
like,
it a warning sign for you two then if someone doesn't ask questions? Because I've been told by other
yes,
people, at least for me, if you don't ask questions, then I wouldn't say I wouldn't hire you. I would probably do a couple of interviews to get you comfortable and stuff. But generally, I would be like, you don't really show interest because you're not asking the
yeah, it's kind of
questions.
like what Chris was saying with the like they're passionate or they're hungry for this opportunity. They're not being like too hardcore about, oh, I really want this job. But the fact that they're asking those questions shows me they actually care about the place they're trying to go to, and it also shows me their own personal values and where they draw lines for themselves. That's
Yeah.
super important.
Ask questions about like how the workflow is, how the pipeline works. You can ask questions about the software. Like how we approach things. I think all of that is great. Like you should ask those questions. Because then you're also like you're in a position later on where if you're taking notes as well in your interview, during your interview, right, you can compare like, oh, so these guys work in this way, these other guys work in this other way, and then you have an option to actually be like, because you won't remember all of that, if you have several interviews, And also like what tip for me is like don't come to the interview and when I ask you if you play video games and you say I don't play video games because then I'm like I need you to play video. Like even if you don't spend your time playing a lot of video games, I need you to say that you play video games. Like that's
Yeah.
important to me if you're in the games industry. Like it's like trying to apply, I don't know, whatever for movies or something, and then you're like, no, I don't. Movies, stupid.
Yeah. I mean, I met people who work in the industry and have a creative role, and they don't play video games.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure, no, for sure. I don't like. I get that. It's just like it's part of the.
They're not my friends though, but yeah, they don't play.
They're not alive anymore.
Just kidding.
Chris makes me ashamed. I don't play enough video games. I play a
I mean,
decent
you
amount,
work
but
really
not
hard,
nearly
dude.
enough.
No, yeah, it matters to me because like it's like it's hard for me to like take people like some especially in design positions seriously if they don't play video games.
Yeah, definitely. If
Like
you're
if you're a
doing
level
the-
designer, why are you not playing all the latest games,
Yeah,
with all the latest coolest
definitely.
level design? Like oh, you're only playing Dota, right? The one map for 10 years. Dota is great. They made the perfect map or whatever. But
Just for a note, Chris is really into Dota.
Yeah,
He likes Dota.
That's why he's choosing it as a reference.
I mean, League of Legends works as well, but it matters to me, right? Like,
But
or
are
like
you
game designers.
Chris? Are you only playing Dota though?
No, I play a
No,
lot of
he's
games,
crazy.
yeah.
He's crazy in the
I
games.
play
Man.
everything. I play everything.
I'll pump through a quick, easy questions. Do a junior environment / lighting artist do documentation? What does that look like? So I guess I don't. I haven't met a junior. I wouldn't necessarily ask a junior to do documentation, but that's just personally. But maybe it's different for you too.
Yes, for me at least.
You do it.
I mean, if they're the ones that came, like, let's say someone needs to solve this problem, they come up with a workflow with the tech art team or someone that they're the ones with the knowledge now. So now, even though they are a junior, they are the ones with the most knowledge on that specific topic. It is definitely a good idea to document all of that information. And then, I mean, if there is a concern like, oh, let's make sure that it's all documented, like, well, we just have a peer review of it afterwards.
Yeah, you
Makes
review
sense.
the documentation.
But that gives them ownership as well as autonomy to be able to be themselves and like actually achieve. They actually did something that I think a lot of studios would probably put on intermediate or seniors to solve.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure documentation for junior I avoid because it's often quite a boring, demotivating job for a lot of people. So
Oh, I
I'm
see.
very careful to doing it too early, because it's not.
Yeah, I would go with
Like,
frequency.
Yeah.
it's a lot like in smaller companies, though, right? That because like,
Yes.
all right, cool, we have this new problem. Everybody feels like they're involved and wanting to, help deliver a thing, right? And then it's like, okay, cool, I need you to look into, this destruction system and write down your notes, like write down your thoughts. Is it usable? Is it annoying to work with? Write it down. It doesn't have to be perfect documentation per se, but I need notes. I need like think a couple of
You're a scientist.
think a year ahead and be like, if we have like, how will it work for us? Like it's good practice for people to be able to like think about the big scope.
Makes sense. Jeremiah, as also Jeremy have asked you, and I also asked you, just DM us because you have obviously quite a few questions, and I think we don't mind giving our point of view in a DM really in this case. So gonna skip your stuff. Wesley, perfection is overrated. There's no such thing as perfection, to be honest. Personally speaking, anyway. And as an artist, I think when you do perfection,
You don't
you never
anything.
finish. Yeah,
Yeah.
you just need to stop. The most challenging is if your art director is a perfectionist. That's the biggest challenge. Or your lead is a perfectionist. That's a different topic altogether, because then you kind of have to navigate that arena a little bit as well.
How perfect can we make it within this time frame?
Yeah,
What's
exactly.
the deadline?
Yeah.
Deadlines are your best friend.
Yeah, and also stressful. But hey, that's a different topic as well. I'm just gonna pump through before we end. Louis Mills, thanks for your comments. We always get told to send cover letter, even if not asked for our university placement. I mean, I always send cover letter, and that has proven to work for me, because whoever does read it does get to know you a little bit ahead of time, and you can kind of cater to the studio and show that it's not just a random CV you're sending, right? And that's where I think the cover letter is valuable. It's your ability and opportunity to show that you're not just sending out lots of applications. You actually design the cover letter for the studio. You mention specific about yourself, but a little couple of lines about their projects or the studio, why you're interested, and maybe you love their franchise, so on and so forth.
It's probably where you'll see the most. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go on.
It's probably where you see the most soft skills in this like written form for the interview process. Is in that phase. It doesn't hurt to send that stuff, even though sometimes it like maybe it doesn't hit me, but maybe it's supposed to hit HR, and then they're going through that and they're like, oh, this person seems super passionate, checks all the boxes that they have, and then it's to the next phase.
I mean, usually you're hiring for a purpose, right? Like, we need someone with these particular skills and experience, right? So if you have that written down, like whatever in the cover letter, like when it goes through HR, they know what you're looking for what the team needs, right? So if that's like written down there, and you manage this and this, and you did all this foliage stuff and these systems or whatever, then it's a very easy pick to like, okay, cool, we need to interview this person. Like, this person needs to go forward. Right, so it's good to detail stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, just pump through quickly. What are some social skills you wish more people had? Uncommon, underrated skills. Humor. Just kidding.
Maybe the ability to. So there's definitely not everyone has the skill to be able to have, or like approach you for a conversation, and hopefully, I can help you like relax on that, and you don't get nervous trying to approach me for a conversation or something that you want to raise. The one that I would say is probably the most underrated is being able to see when, okay, we've got this problem, everyone's there giving their ideas, knowing when to stop, or knowing when to be like, okay, let's try this and we'll go that way, and if it doesn't work, we'll come back and we'll try some other options. But like I guess it's kind of like reading the room. I think that's when you can't
It's
tell
important.
that everyone's ready to move on.
Yeah, for me, it's like thinking before speaking, in a way, because it's also part of like
Sounds
the
so
like
serious.
knowing
Half
when
the
it's the
battle.
right time to speak or bring something up, because I'm not saying I'm great at it either, but it's like if you're like reacting badly to something in the game, for example, right? And then you're like on the chat or like you're on the internal mail or whatever, and you're just like blah blah. This is like blah shit. Like this gameplay, whatever this level, because it's not the right time, and you're probably messaging everybody so everybody can see it. It's like you know save your feedback, like think about what you're writing, like make it a little bit official, don't like just it's not Reddit, like it's not like gamer forum blah because you play video games, right? It needs to be like, because you can potentially like hurt people's feelings, right? Like people spend time on something, they're designing, like I made a level, and if you're just like your first reaction to that is negative because maybe you don't find it as good, dude, you can like, not only are you coming across as like, oh, you're a real downer for a lot of people, right? It's like you're rude and like hurtful. It needs to be delivered properly, which is important, I think. And that is very hard because people, when even if passion is great, right? That passion shines through a lot in game development. So
Yeah, that's true. Um,
sorry, that is a serious point, but like, yeah, it's
it's very
yeah,
serious.
it's very hard to control that thing when you're passionate about stuff.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think I don't know about YouTube, but I was definitely more passionate when I was younger because I wasn't a realistic person when I started out. Because my first goal was to have my own game company, which obviously didn't go as planned. So you get the so you're like, I can't do it. I don't know. Life's so hard. I'm terrible. I can't do this. So you can become very realistic and go, yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. Nope, nope. So yeah, I mean, it depends, I suppose. But it's definitely good insight so far. I'm gonna pump through some more questions. Unless Jeremy, you have something you want to add again?
There was something, but I lost it. It's all good. Should have written it down.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You
I'm
were,
writing
yeah.
it down
Should
now
have
here
written
on
it
the
down,
left.
man.
Like,
you guys were talking about note taking skills earlier. You should be doing
yeah,
it as well. Hello,
hello.
Jolan Peep. Can you give an I hate that word.
Anonymous.
Anonymous horror story from an interview? Probably not.
I can't. I don't like to imitate people. I guess is the way,
Wait,
unless it's Chris.
Also, horror story is very subjective, so we don't even know what that means to.
what do you mean with imitate people?
He wants to do the voice acting and body language, all of it.
Like,
Oh, I thought like someone
yeah.
was imitating you in the interview.
Oh,
That would be funny.
I was like, I don't like that. I don't like when people do that. Yeah.
That would be funny.
All right, okay, I get it. Yeah.
Cool. Moving on. Jojon is asking something that makes me anxious during interview, makes the entire conversation awkward. How can I calm myself down and speak confidently?
I personally, like, ever since I started going to interviews, like, it works for me. I sit confidently down in the chair and lean back and put my arms like on the arms rests, like I'm like open body language. That helps me at least, like getting comfortable in the seat, and not try to like bunch up. But I mean, yeah, it's when I'm nervous, I always tell people I'm nervous as well, just to
that
like
helps a
be
lot.
like my jittering and like my stuff. That's me being nervous. Not like that's not how how I act. Generally, yeah.
Yeah. How about
That's
you,
actually
Jeremy?
that's a really good idea.
You want to steal that answer? Okay.
Well, no, that's that's what I do as well. You go on stage and instantly go, okay, well, like you guys, this is stressful. Anyways, and then just
Yeah,
kind of
exactly. If you
go
go on
into
stage, you're like,
or
oh
like
well,
I'm like,
this is
oh,
terrifying. Like, yeah,
wow,
it
you guys,
helps. I
there are
don't
way too many faces in here. Can we make like half of them leave? Is that an
yeah,
option?
break the ice. Like, yeah, it works.
No one's getting up. Okay, I guess I'll continue. I mean, I guess it's just to remind yourself that you're in that interview because they already have felt that, like, maybe there was an art test before or a written part of the interview and that all went well. They've already decided we want to chat with you and see like who you are. The conversations will be awkward because you have no idea who these people are that you're talking to. They're not like friends. If you're lucky, at some point you'll be in an interview and it'll turn out one of them is your friend. And you're like, wait a minute, why is he in here? He's not supposed to be in here. He knows me. And they're like, wait, he does? And you're but it's yeah. But it's gonna be awkward, and awkward's okay. Just accept awkward is an okay feeling to be in.
It's I'm not going to give you a long answer because I do coaching in this, but it's really mindset and self-expectation, really, more than anything. It's learning not to go in with an expectation. But there's a trick you can do, well, kind of hard to do during the interview unless you turn off the camera. There's a trick you can do before the interview. You can take ice cold water and put your face into it. There's a scientific research that shows there's chemicals activated, the same ones, and it counters the anxiety chemicals that happens in our brain. So you can have like cold ice cube or something, and maybe you can turn off the camera a little bit, and if you just you get some cold water, it's going to calm down all those anxiety, there's nervousness you get, and you don't have to think about it. It works a lot of time when I was dealing with this in the beginning, and it's there's quite a few research about it too. So that's a little trick for anyone.
That's cool. I did not know about this.
Wesley is switching from one career to another career, and also first, I see a lot of people write junior lighting / environment artist. Is that two different things? Do you guys consider two different specialty, or do you think people should be clear what they want to do when they are applying and what they're trying to do, basically? Before we answer that question,
I mean, when I read that message, I'm assuming that they're switching because they got the position, or that's the switch they want to do. I don't know. If it's the switch you want to do,
I would become a junior. He's want to become either a junior lighting or environment. For me, that's two different things.
Yeah. I mean, if you do the environment art, I know it's weird because I have opinions of like you can have an environment art portfolio, and if it's well lit, they can teach you, like lighting team can teach you the technical ways of
but the
approaching
question
lighting,
though
right?
is like, how do leads view career changers in general, right, compared to like newbies?
Yeah, I just
know that what they want to do.
Yeah, I just want to stick on that thing because it.
They're writing one of the side comments is because of different skill set of us three, they are making sure to cover both bases so we can answer both bases. But
okay.
But when you ask questions, it's good just to ask question on the role you want to go to, because that means I don't have to pay attention to the question if it says environment artist.
So how do leads view career changes compared to newbies? So if you come from being cybersecurity project management, that there's a specific set of skills that you've been doing for 9 years that can be utilized in this new like direction. You know what I mean? And there are certain things that aren't going to be as good, but it's fine because it's a junior position. We help you rise up and you'll get there. Whatever you were before is always interesting. And I would prefer that you have some type of experience in life outside of just gaming and game dev, because that brings other things to the table that maybe someone else doesn't have.
I think I don't think it's a black and white answer. I think it depends on the person who's multiple people who are making the decision. For example, my last art director wants people who have done other roles, other things, because they are more likely to come up with other solutions or other workflow or other things, and they pay attention to what books you read, what movies. Do you pick the same thing as everyone else does, or do you pick something he doesn't know about? And I think it really is very individual. So I don't think it's a negative thing, especially if you have cybersecurity background, which means you probably learn Python, I'm gonna assume, because I used to teach cybersecurity as well. And that means you can do some, and if you want to be a lighting artist, it's the last comment you sent me, which means you can do a lot of, you can do your own tools, you can do your own light rigs, and you wouldn't necessarily depend on a technical artist such as myself. So that's a good advantage, I would say.
I've like For me, it's been a bit different. Like people, like very experienced people switching careers, sometimes come in, and it depends on the person who they like, who their lead is or whatever. Like, um, but you kind of have to check like if the lead or whomever you're like who's your boss or whatever, like if they like being told what how to do things. Like if you come with like a different opinion, like oh no, we should do this, but on the like on paper you're a junior artist in games and never have worked in games before. Like then like you kind of have to gauge like do they want that input? Do they care about like getting that input? You know, some people are very like proud, you know, and don't want to be told how to do things, you know, and yeah, it. So I would just be like gauge the vibe of like how the team works, you know, and maybe if, like we said in the beginning, like hopefully you can get that in the interview already.
Yeah.
Like get a feeling for like does this person actually want that type of, maybe you don't want to work for a person that can't like take your input, you know, because that happens in leads and in managers and as well, right? Like people the dirtiest like, no, this is the best way, everybody else just take your ideas out, you know, whatever, I don't want to hear them kind of thing, you know, that happens.
I'm gonna jump over one question so Isabella can rephrase it so I understand it a bit better. We jump to this last one for now. Is creating complex, smart materials more of a tacker or that's still on environment artist level? I think it varies a lot from my experience. There's a material artist if it's a very big company. Environment artist in our company do the materials. Even sometimes I'll do it. Even I'll do VFX sometimes. Depends really because it's like less than 50 people in our company and tech guys. I think it depends. Again, I mean, depends on the company, depends on the company's right, but that's my experience. But it does do. So these are some of the things you want to ask during an interview. So when I do an interview, I specifically ask these things. Do I need to do blueprint? Yes. Okay. Can I have time to improve my blue skill? So if there's anything I am insecure about, even though I know I could pull it off, I'm very clear that I am not a master in it. Are you okay with it? So I think that's where you have to kind of be true to yourself and be honest with them and be be clear. So I'm not going to mention the studio's name, but certain studios I wouldn't join, not because they're not a great place to work, because I know they're very tech heavy lighting artists and I'm not comfortable joining until I'm comfortable joining. So I just turn them down basically, because I don't want to join a studio and I'm completely useless and then lose the job. That doesn't really help me at all. So I think that's my answer for that. What about you, Jeremy? Or
I was gonna say like it's based on studio size. It is. You're right. It's definitely like ask the question in an interview because like I would assume in a very large studio, those are going to be made by either the props team or the material artists. And then when you get to a really small studio, the person making the smart material also is building the props and the levels, and probably is even the level designer. Like, and maybe even lighting at the same time. Like it's all of the depending on the size of the studio.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I'm a bit more strict being the tech art director, right? Like it's like if you're making smart materials or like complex, you know, whatever materials, right? It's and you call yourself a tech artist, it's a problem for me because you know, making complex materials isn't really what it's about, right? It's about like you have to understand the consequences of what you're doing, like and how that affects the production, the performance, you know, how we like I don't want everybody on my team, for example, to be making materials right now, right? Like because or like it needs to be a time and place to do that, essentially, because it's part of production workflows, right? So you want to make sure that things are done the right way, and then within the limits, when they're defined, then you can do it, right? Essentially.
Okay.
So yeah.
Cool. Last question, and then I'm gonna borrow them for myself a little bit, and then we're done, and I can actually eat instead of starving to death.
I haven't had dinner yet.
Isabella, so she's asking, basically what she's asking is, how do you avoid accidentally speaking over people, or how should you interact during Zoom call? My answer is, I personally train people to always look into the camera because there is an unconscious psychologically effect when you look. Even when I do it, you probably notice during the stream, I'm a lot of the times I'm just looking into the camera, even when I'm talking and even when I'm watching, because there's a certain unconscious psychological connection when you look into the camera. It feels like you're looking into the person, into the viewers. It's more close. So definitely look into the camera as much as you can. Have a straight body language. Talk slower than you normally would, because a lot of people cannot keep up with very quick talking. There might be delays, there might be some issues. So you want to make sure you talk very slowly and clearly. And obviously as well, I would say when it comes to accidentally speaking over, count to 3, like 1, 2, 3, and if no one is taking the initiative, you can then try and do it, right? But also you'll pick up during the interview who is the introvert and extrovert. So introverts probably 7 seconds they need to kind of start speaking, but extroverts 3 seconds is enough, I've noticed, before they just start jabbing around. So just count, give people time. That tends to work. How about you two?
I
It's
just kind of
tricky.
flow. Yeah, but yeah, it is
It
tricky.
depends on what you're using, right? Like Zoom, they kind of muted the other people as soon as someone else speaks, right? Isn't that what happens on Zoom or something? Zoom meetings?
Not on my
Like
meetings that I've done.
when, yeah, because I know that some
I think that
software they
was an
kind of just
option.
like as soon as audio comes in, right, from someone mic, right, then it kind of just mutes everybody else. So like if you have people that tend to do that, right, it becomes very disruptive. But like we're doing here, like I talk over you sometimes, and it
Yeah,
feels
we all
more like
do.
a yeah, and it
I
feels
just
more
did
like a
it again.
regular conversation. Yeah, but like I can hear what you're saying, and it makes it feel like a more regular
Yeah,
conversation to me, and I feel like that is
yeah.
more natural, and I
Yeah.
personally prefer that. But like in an interview, you should probably wait your turn
Yeah.
to speak.
Context matters for sure, because you, like in this stream, you might have noticed in the beginning I was pointing out who should talk, and then halfway through I was stopped doing it, because I also prefer that we interrupt, because it's a natural flow, and it doesn't really matter, because of course we forget some things there, here and there, but it's more fun if it's just normal. You don't want to have it systemized, and I
That's a,
don't think during interview it's a problem either. And you can always just keep talking when someone interrupts you. If you haven't finished, that's also possible. And the body language, it really depends on your confidence, and I don't think there should be any problem really. What do you think, Jeremy?
I mean, I think everything should just be chill, man. It's just a chill conversation. I like things to be relaxed, and when I sense someone is not relaxed, I
You get
start focusing on trying to get them relaxed instead of focusing on the
yeah.
the interview. Like,
But would you be judging the body language then, that led to a bit late, too relaxed, or
no, I mean, I think it's because I don't read into it enough, those aspects of things. If someone's extremely relaxed in their interview, it can start to turn into a feeling of that person being very cocky, or they feel like they've got this in the bag. You'll read that instantly. But someone who's relaxed and is just having a conversation is much more, it just feels natural. And when things feel natural, people are more comfortable, and that can, like, comfort can lead to like the soft skill.
that's true.
Soft
I mean,
skill
that's
vibes.
definitely good insight. Thank you so much for both Chris and Jeremy for staying 24 minutes longer than you were actually agreed to. So please, viewers, say thank you for their time.
Nice. We gotta wait 3 seconds.
And as usual, if you appreciate the stream, we will keep going and continuing, assuming you like and subscribe and you show interest. The engagement definitely helps a lot and keep the stream going. And please join Dynasty Empire's Discord if you haven't already, or you can also join my Discord. We should be somewhere, anywhere, I don't know. Ask, are you still online, Vlad? He can post the links. So yeah, thank you again. Thank you for your time. I'll borrow them a little bit. And again, Chris, Jerry, I know you're busy too. I appreciate, as usual, your time and commitment as well.
Yeah, this is great. I love
Yeah,
it.
so see you guys, everyone. Have a good week. Show up to work, do your thing, don't do drugs, rock and roll. Thank you. Goodbye.